Continuing with Percy Jackson and the Olympians, book 4 of the Percy Jackson and Olympians, I'm sorry, book 5 of the Percy Jackson and Olympians series. This is the last Olympian. Chapter 7 is called My Math Teacher Gives Me a Lift. We emerged in Central Park, just north of the pond. Mrs. O'Leary looked pretty tired as she limped over to a cluster of boulders. She started sniffing around, and I was afraid she might mark her territory, but Nico said, "It's okay. She just smells the way home." I frowned. Through the rocks? The underworld has two major entrances, Nico said. You know the one in LA, Charon's Ferry. Nico nodded. Most souls go that way, but there's a smaller path, harder to find. The door of Orpheus. The dude with the harp? The dude with the lyre, Nico corrected. Yeah, him. He used music to charm the earth and open a new path into the underworld. He sang his way right into Hades' palace and almost got away with his wife's soul. I remember the story. Orpheus wasn't supposed to look behind him when he was leading his wife back to the world, but of course he did. It was one of those typical, and so they died, the end stories that always made us demigods feel warm and fuzzy. So, this is the door of Orpheus. I tried to be impressed, but it still looked like a pile of rocks to me. How does it open? We need music, Nico said. How's your singing? No. Can't you just like tell it to open? You're the son of Hades and all. It's not so easy. We need music. I was pretty sure if we tried to sing, all I would cause was an avalanche. I have a better idea. I turned and called, Grover. We waited for a long time. Miss O'Leary curled up and took a nap. I could hear the crickets in the woods and the owl hooting. Traffic hummed along Central Park West. Horse hooves clopped down nearby path, maybe a mounted police patrol. I was sure they'd love to find two kids hanging out in the park at one in the morning. It's no good, Nico said at last. But I had a feeling. My empathy link was really tingling for the first time in months, which either meant a whole lot of people had suddenly switched on the nature channel or Grover was close. I shut my eyes and concentrated. Grover. I knew he was somewhere in the park. Why couldn't I sense his emotions? All I got was a faint hum at the base of my skull. Grover, I thought more intensely. Something said. An image came into my head. I saw a giant elm tree deep in the woods, well off the main path. Gnarled roots lanced the ground, making the kind of a bed. Lying in it with his arms crossed and his eyes closed was a satyr. At first, I couldn't be sure it was Grover. He was covered in twigs and leaves, like he'd been sleeping there a long time. The roots seemed to be shaping themselves around him, slowly pulling him into the earth. Grover, I said, wake up. Huh? Dude, you're covered in dirt. Wake up. Sleepy, his mind murmured. Food, I suggested. Pancakes. His eyes slot open. His eyes shot open. A blur of thoughts filled my head, like he was suddenly on fast forward. The image shattered and I almost fell over. What happened? Nico asked. I got through. Keys. Yeah, on his way. A minute later, the tree next to us shivered and Grover fell out of the branches right on his head. Grover, I yelled. Whoop! Mrs. O'Leary looked up, probably wondering if we were going to play fetch with the satyr. Ah! Grover bleated. You okay, man? Oh, I'm fine. He rubbed his head. His horns had grown so much, they poked an inch above his curly hair. As I was at the other end of the park, the dyads had this great idea of passing me through the trees to get me here. They don't understand height very well. He grinned and got to his feet. Well, his hooves, actually. Since last summer, Grover had stopped trying to disguise himself as human. He never wore a cap or fake feet anymore. He didn't even wear jeans since he had furry goat legs from the waist down. His t-shirt had a picture from the book from that book where the wild things are. It was covered with dirt and tree sap. His goatee gotten fuller, almost manly or goatly, and he was as tall as me now. It's good to see you, G Man. I said, you remember Nico? Grover nodded at Nico. Then he gave me a big hug. He smelled like fresh mown lawns. Percy, he bleated. I missed you. Miss Camp. They don't serve good enchiladas in the wilderness. I was worried, he said. I said, there where you've been the last 2 months? The last two Grover's smile faded. The last 2 months? What are you talking about? We haven't heard from you. I said, Juniper's worried. We sent Iris messages, but hold on. He looked up at the stars like he was trying to calculate his position. What month is it? August. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. It's June. I just laid down to take a nap and he grabbed my arms. I remember now. He knocked me. He knocked me out. Percy, we have to stop him. Whoa! I said, slow down. Tell me what happened. He took a deep breath. I was I was walking in the woods by the Harlem Mere, and I felt this tremble in the ground, like something powerful was near. You can sense stuff like that? Nico asked. Grover nodded. Since Pan's death, I can feel when something is wrong in nature. It's like my ears and eyes are sharper when I'm in the wild. Anyway, I started I started following the scent. This man in long black coat was walking through the park, and I noticed he didn't cast a shadow. Middle of a sunny day, and he cast no shadow. He kind of shimmered as he moved. Like a mirage? Nico asked. Yes, Grover said. And whenever he passes humans, the humans would pass out, Nico said. Curl up and go to sleep. That's right. Then after he was gone, they'd get up and go about their business like nothing happened. I stared at Nico. You know this guy in black? Afraid so, Nico said. Grover, what happened? I followed the guy. He kept looking up at the buildings around the park like he was making estimates or something. This lady jogger ran by and she curled up on the sidewalk and started snoring. The guy in the black put his hand in on her forehead like he was checking her temperature. Then he kept walking. By this time, I knew he was a monster or something even worse. I followed him into the grove and the base of the big elm tree. I was about to summon some dyads to help me capture him when he turned and Grover swallowed. Percy, his face. I couldn't make out his face because it kept shifting. He just looking at him made me sleepy. What are you doing? He said. You have a second, you have a look around? Just having a look around. You should always scout a battlefield before the battle. I said something really smart like, this forest is under my protection. You don't start any battles here. And he laughed. He said, you're lucky I'm saving my energy for the main event, little satyr. I'll just grant you a short nap. Pleasant dreams. And that was the last thing I remember. Nico exhaled. Grover, you met Morpheus, the god of dreams. You're lucky you ever woke up. 2 months, Grover moaned. He put me to sleep for 2 months? I tried to wrap my mind around what this meant. Now, it made me It made sense why we hadn't been able to contact Grover all this time. Why didn't the nymphs try to wake you? I asked. Why didn't the nymphs try to wake you? I asked. Grover shrugged. Most nymphs aren't good with time. 2 months for a tree, that's nothing. They're probably thinking they probably didn't think anything was wrong. We got to figure out what Morpheus was doing in the park. I said, I don't like this main event thing he mentioned. He's working for Kronos, Nico said. We know that already. A lot of minor gods are. This just proves that we're going, a lot of minor gods are. This just proves that we're going to be an invasion. There is going to be an invasion, Percy. We have to get on with our plan. Wait, Grover said. What plan? We told him. And Grover tugged at his leg fur. You're not serious, he said. Not the underworld. I'm not asking you to come, man. I promise. I know you just woke up, but we need some music to open the door. Can you do it? Grover took out his reed pipes. I guess I could try. I know a few Nirvana tunes that can split rocks, but Percy, are you sure you want to do this? Um, Please, man, I said. It would mean a lot. For old time's sake, he whimpered. As I recall, in the old times, we almost died a lot. But okay, here goes nothing. He put his pipes to his lips and played a shrill, lively tune. The boulders trembled in a few more stanzas and they cracked open, revealing a triangular crevice. I peered inside. Steps led down into the darkness. The air smelled of mildew and death. It brought back bad memories of my trip through the labyrinth last year. This tunnel felt even more dangerous. It led straight to the land of Hades, and that was almost always a one-way trip. I turned to Grover. Thanks, I think. Percy, is Kronos really going to invade? I wish I could tell you better, but yeah, he will. I thought Grover might chew up his reed pipes with anxiety, but he straightened up, brushed off his t-shirt. I couldn't help thinking how different he looked from fat old Lennis. I've I've got to rally the nature spirits. Then maybe we can help. I'll see if we can find this Morpheus. Better tell Juniper you're okay too. His eyes widened. Juniper, oh, she's going to kill me. He started running off. He started to run off, then scrambled back and gave me another hug. Be careful down there. Come back alive. Once he was gone, Nico and I roused Mrs. O'Leary from her nap. Then she smelled when, when she smelled the tunnel, she got excited and led the way down the steps. It was a pretty tight fit. I hoped she wouldn't get stuck. I couldn't imagine how much Drano we need to unstick a hellhound, which halfway down a tunnel to the underworld. Ready? Nico asked me. It'll be fine. Don't worry. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself. I glanced up at the stars, wondering if I'd ever see them again. Then we plunged into the darkness. The stairs went on forever. Narrow, steep, and slippery. It was completely dark except for the light of my sword. I tried to go slow, but Mrs. O'Leary had other ideas. She bounded ahead, barking happily, and barking happily. Sorry. The sound echoed through the tunnel like cannon shots, and I figured we would not be catching anybody by surprise once we reached the bottom. Nico lagged behind, which I thought was strange. You okay? I asked him. Fine. What was the expression? What was the expression on his face? Doubt. Just keep moving, he said. I didn't have much choice. I followed Mrs. O'Leary into the depths. After another hour, I started to hear the roar of a river. We emerged at the base of a cliff. on a plain of black volcanic sand. To our right, the river Styx gushed from rocks and roared off in the cascade of rapids. To our left, far away in the gloom, fires burned in the ramparts of Cerberus, the great black walls of Hades' kingdom. I shrugged. I'd I'd first been here when I was 12, and only Annabeth and Grover's company had given me the courage to keep going. Nico wasn't going to be quite as helpful as with the courage thing. He looked pale and worried himself. Mrs. O'Leary acted happy. She ran along the beach, picked up a random human leg bone, romped it back toward me. She dropped the bone at my feet and waited for me to throw. Hmm, maybe later, girl. I stared at the dark waters, trying to get up my nerve. So, Nico, how do we do this? We have to go inside the gates first, he said. But the river's right here. I have to get something. It's only war. He marched off without warning. I um I frowned. Nico hadn't he marched off without waiting, not warning. I frowned. Nico hadn't mentioned anything about going inside the gates. But now that we were here, I didn't know what else to do. Reluctantly, I followed him down the beach toward the big black gates. Lines of dead stood outside waiting to get in. It must have been a heavy day for funerals because even the easy death line was backed up. Woof, Mrs. O'Leary said. And before I could stop her, she bounded toward the security checkpoint. Cerberus, the guard dog of Hades, appeared out of the gloom, three-headed Rottweiler so big he made Mrs. O'Leary look like a toy poodle. Cerberus was half transparent, so he really had a hard time. He's really hard to see until he's close enough to kill you. But he acted like he didn't care about us. He was too busy saying hello to Mrs. O'Leary. Mrs. O'Leary, no, I shouted at her. Don't sniff. Oh, man. Nico smiled. Then he looked at me and his expression turned all serious again. He remembered something unpleasant. Come on. They won't give us any trouble in the line. You're with me. I didn't like it, but we slipped through the security ghouls and into the fields of Apostle. I had to whistle for Miss O'Leary 3 times before she left Cerberus alone and ran after us. We hiked over we hiked over black fields of grass, dotted with black poplar trees. If I really died in a few days, like the prophecy said, I might end up here forever. But I tried not to think about that. Nico trudged ahead, bringing us closer and closer to the palace of Hades. Hey, I said, we're inside the gates already. Where are we? Miss O'Leary growled. A shadow appeared overhead, something cold, dark, and stinking of death. It swooped down and landed on the top of a poplar tree. Unfortunately, I recognized her. She had a shriveled face, a horrible blue knit hat, and a crumpled velvet dress. Leathery back wings sprang from her back. Her feet had sharp talons, and her brass claws hands had held a flaming whip and a paisley handbag. Mrs. Dodds, I said. She bared her fangs. Welcome back, honey. Her 2 sisters, the other Furies, swooped down and settled next to her in the branches of the poplar. You know Electo? Nico asked me. You mean the hag in the middle? Yeah, I said. She was my math teacher. Nico nodded, like this didn't surprise him. He looked up at the Furies and took a deep breath. I've done what my father asked. Take us to the palace. I tensed. Wait a second, Nico. What do you... I'm afraid this is my new lead, Percy. My father promised me information about my family, but he wants to see you before we try the river. I'm sorry. You tricked me. I was so mad I couldn't think. I lunged at him, but the Furies were fast. 2 of them swooped down and plucked me up by the arms. My sword fell out of my hands, and before I knew it, I was dangling 60 feet in the air. Oh, don't struggle, honey. My old math teacher cackled in my ear. I hate to drop you. Mrs. O'Leary barked angrily and jumped, trying to reach me, but we were too high. Tell Mrs. O'Leary to behave, Nico warned. He was hovering near me in the clutches of the third fury. I don't want her to get hurt, Percy. My father is waiting. He just wants to talk. I wanted to tell Mrs. O'Leary to attack Nico, but it wouldn't have done any good. And Nico was right about one thing. My dog could get hurt if she tried to pick a fight with the Furies. I gritted my teeth. Mrs. O'Leary, down. It's okay, girl. She whimpered and turned in circles, looking up at me. All right, traitor, I growled at Nico. You got your prize. Take me to the stupid palace. Electo dropped me like a stack of turnips in the middle of the palace garden. It was beautiful in a creepy way. Skeletal white trees grew from marble basins. Flower beds overflowed with golden plants and gemstones. A pair of thrones, one bone and one silver, sat on the balcony and with a view of the fields of apostle. It would have been nice place to spend a Saturday morning, except for the sulfurous smell and the cries of tortured souls in the distance. Skeleton warriors guarded the only exit. They wore tattered U.S. Army desert combat fatigues and carried M16s. The third Fury deposited Nico next to me. Then all three of them settled on top of the skeletal throne. I resisted the urge to strangle Nico. They'd only stop me. I'd have to wait for my revenge. I stared at the empty thrones, waiting for something to happen. Then the air shimmered. Three figures appeared, Hades and Persephone on their thrones, and an older woman standing between them. They seemed to be in the middle of an argument. Told you he was a bum, the older woman said. Mother, Persephone replied. We have visitors, Hades barked. Please. Hades, one of my least favorite gods, smoothed his black robes, which were filled with terrified faces of the damned. He had pale skin and intense eyes of a madman. Percy Jackson, he said with satisfaction. At last. Queen Persephone studied me curiously. I'd seen her once before in the winter, but now in the summer, she looked totally different, like a totally different goddess. She had lustrous black hair and warm brown eyes. Her dress shimmered with colors. Her flower pattern in the fabric changed and bloomed. Roses, tulips, and honeysuckle. The woman standing between them was obviously Persephone's mother. She had their same hair and eyes, but looked older and sterner. Her dress was golden, the color of a wheat field, and her hair was woven with dried grasses, so it reminded me of a wicker basket. I figured if somebody had lit a match next to her, she'd probably be in serious trouble. Huh, the older woman said. Demigods, just what we need. Next to me, Nico knelt. I wished I had my sword, so I could cut his stupid head off. Unfortunately, Riptide was still out in the fields somewhere. Father, Nico said, I have done as you asked. Took you long enough, Hades grumbled. Your sister would have done a better job. Nico lowered his head. If I hadn't been so mad at the little creep, I might have felt sorry for him. I glared up at the god of the dead. What do you want, Hades? To talk, of course. The god twisted his mouth in a cruel smile. Didn't Nico tell you? So, this whole quest was a lie? Nico brought me down here to get me killed? Oh, no, Hades said. I'm afraid Nico was quite sincere about wanting to help you. The boy is as honest as he is dense. I simply convinced him to take a small detour and bring you here first. Father, Nico said, you promised that Percy would not be harmed. If you said if I brought him, you would tell me about my past, about my mother. Queen Persephone was sighed dramatically. Can we please not talk about that woman? in my presence? I'm sorry, my dove, Hades said. I had to promise the boys something. The older lady harumphed. I warned you, daughter. This scoundrel Hades is no good. You could have married the god of doctors or the god of lawyers, but no, you had to eat the pomegranate. Mother, and get stuck in the underworld. Mother, please. And here it is, August. And do you come home like you're supposed to? Do you ever think about your poor lonely mother? Demeter, Hades shouted. That is enough. You are a guest in my house. Oh, a house is it? She said. You call this dump a house? Make my daughter live in this dark, damp. I told you, Hades said, grinding his teeth. There's a war in the world above. You and Persephone are better off here with me. Excuse me, I broke in, but if you're going to kill me, could you just get on with it? All three gods looked at me. Well, this one has an attitude, Demeter observed. Indeed, Hades agreed. I'd love to kill him. Father, Nico said, you promised. Husband, we talked about this, Persephone chided. You can't go around incinerating every hero. Besides, he's brave. I like that. Hades rolled his eyes. You like that Orpheus fellow too. Look how well that turned out. Let me kill him. Just a little bit. Father, you promised, Nico said. You said you only want to talk to him. And you said if I brought him, you'd explain. Hades glowered, smoothing his folds of his robe. So I shall. Your mother, what can I tell you? She was a wonderful woman. He glanced uncomfortably at Persephone. Forgive me, my dear. I mean, for a mortal, of course. Her name was Maria D'Angelo. She was from Venice. Her father was a diplomat in Washington, D.C. That's where I met her. When you and your sister were young, it was a bad time to be children of Hades. World War II was brewing. A few of my other children were leading the losing side. I thought it was best to put you two out of harm's way. That's why you hid us in the Lotus Casino? Hades shrugged. You didn't age. You didn't realize time was passing. I waited for the right time to bring you out. But what happened to our mother? Why don't I remember her? Not important, Hades snapped. What? Of course it's important. You had other children. Why were we the only ones who were sent away? And who was the lawyer who got us out? Hades gritted his teeth. You would do well to listen more and talk less, boy. As for the lawyer, Hades snapped his fingers, and on top of his throne, the Fury Electo began to change until she was a middle-aged man in a pinstripe suit with a briefcase. He looked strange, crouching at Hades' shoulder. You, Nico said. The Fury cackled. I do lawyers and teachers very well. Nico was trembling. But why did you free us from the casino? You know why, Hades said. This idiot son of Poseidon cannot be allowed to be the child of the prophecy. I plucked a ruby off the nearest plant and threw it at Hades. It sank harmlessly into his robe. And you should be helping Olympus, I said. All the other gods are fighting Typhoon, and you're just sitting here, waiting things out. Hades finished. Yes, that's correct. When was the last time Olympus ever helped me, Half-Blood? When's the last time a child of mine was ever welcomed as a hero? Bah! Why should I rush out to help them? I stay here with my forces intact. And when Kronos comes after you, let him try. He'll be weakened. And my son here, Nico, Hades looked at him with distaste. Well, he's not much now, I grant you. It would have been better if Bianca had lived, but give him 4 more years of training. We can hold out that long, surely. Nico will turn 16, as the prophecy says, and then he will make the decision that will save the world, and I will be the king of the gods. You're crazy, I said. Kronos will crush you right after he finishes pulverizing Olympus. Hades spread his hands. Well, you'll get a chance to find out, Half-Blood, because you'll be waiting out this war in my dungeons. No, Nico said. Father, this wasn't our agreement, and you haven't told me everything. I've told you all you need to know, Hades said. As for our agreement, I spoke with Jackson. I did not harm him. You got your information. If you wanted a better deal, you should have made me swear on the sticks. Now go to your room. He waved his hand and Nico vanished. The boy needs to eat more, Demeter grumbled. He's too skinny. He needs more cereal. Persephone rolled her eyes. Mother, enough with the cereal. My lord Hades, are you sure we can't let this little hero go? He's awfully brave. No, my dear. I spared his life. That's it. That's enough. I'm not sure she was going to stand up for me. I was sure she was going to stand up for me. The brave, beautiful Persephone was going to get me out of this. She shrugged indifferently. Fine. What's for breakfast? I'm starving. Cereal, Demeter said. Mother! The 2 women disappeared in a swirl of flowers and wheat. Don't feel too bad, Percy Jackson, Hades said. My ghosts keep me well informed of Kronos' plan. I can assure you that you had no chance to stop him in time. By tonight, it will be too late for your precious Mount Olympus. The trap will be sprung. What trap? I demanded. If you know about it, do something. At least let me tell the other gods. Hades smiled. You are spirited. I'll give you credit for that. Have fun in my dungeon. We'll check on you again in 50 or 60 years.